Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling human relationships. All those romantic ones, platonic, familial, all that. You've sent us some pretty fascinating sources, and we're here to, I guess, break them down into the most important parts so you can, better navigate your own connections.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting how all your sources kind of point to the same things: self-awareness, communication, and boundaries as like the foundation for healthy relationships.
Right.
They're the tools that help us build stronger bonds, but they can also help you figure out when it's time to walk away from a relationship.
So true. And our main source today is actually a conversation with Lori Gottlieb. She's a psychotherapist and New York Times bestselling author. It's from the JayShettyPodcast. So let's dive into, I guess, some of her wisdom on, how to handle tricky relationship situations.
One of the things she talks about is how people are trying to have like these difficult conversations over text message.
Oh, yeah.
And she really argues that face-to-face is just so much more effective, even if it feels harder, like in the moment. Yeah, it's so much harder to do that in person.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, think about it. When you're texting, you lose, all of the nuance that you get from, an in-person interaction. Your tone of voice, facial expressions, body language, all those subtle cues are missing.
Right.
And it's so easy for things to be, misconstrued, and that can escalate a conflict rather than resolve it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Gottlieb uses this analogy of cement drying to describe how those patterns in a relationship, they get set so early on. And she really suggests addressing those issues right away, head on, instead of waiting. Because it's so much easier to mold that relationship dynamic at the beginning. If you let small issues just fester, they can become much bigger problems later on.
Yeah. It's a very powerful image, isn't it? Imagine trying to reshape concrete once it's set.
Right.
It's almost impossible.
Right.
But if you catch it while it's still wet, you can mold it into, whatever
Right.
form you want. I think relationships are kind of like that. Yeah. So how can our listeners apply this to their own relationships? What does it even mean to, mold the relationship in those early stages?
Well, I think it starts with just being aware of those patterns as they come up. Maybe you notice that your partner tends to withdraw when they're stressed. Or maybe you have this habit of getting defensive during disagreements and arguments. Instead of just brushing those things under the rug, try addressing them directly. But, with compassion and a willingness to understand the other person's perspective.
That kind of reminds me of what Gottlieb said about social anxiety. She's saying it often stems from childhood experiences.
Yeah.
And those internalized negative messages that we all carry with us.
Right.
And she suggests rewriting your story, challenging those old beliefs, and then taking baby steps to build your confidence in social situations.
And I think that ties right back into self-awareness. To rewrite your story, you first have to recognize what those negative narratives are that are holding you back. What are you really afraid of? And then, do you actually have evidence from your adult life that this fear is actually true? A lot of times, those fears are based on these outdated scripts that don't serve us anymore.
It's like we're stuck playing a role that we've outgrown.
Right.
Yeah. And Gottlieb's suggestion to take those baby steps, it really resonated with me. I feel like instead of just completely avoiding social situations altogether, maybe you start by having a one-on-one coffee date with a friend. Or maybe you join a small group activity that you're interested in, something small like that.
Yeah. And then as you experience those positive interactions, you can gradually build up that confidence to handle those larger settings.
Right.
You're proving those negative narratives wrong through your own real life experiences. And I think that can be really empowering.
Totally. And Gottlieb also has some really interesting things to say about finding a partner. And she really challenges this whole idea of the perfect partner. She encourages us to prioritize genuine character traits over those superficial preferences.
It's so easy to get caught up in what we think we should want in a partner.
Yes.
Whether it's based on what society expects or what our families want for us or even just our own idealized image. But she reminds us that true compatibility is so much deeper than all that, surface level stuff.
Right. Those qualities like kindness, emotional stability, flexibility, those are the things that really matter.
Right.
She wants us to really differentiate between the real deal breakers and those superficial preferences that might be totally influenced by those external pressures.
Think about it. Would you rather be with someone who's incredibly attractive, but they lack empathy and emotional intelligence?
Right.
Or would you rather be with someone who might not be conventionally perfect, but they're kind, supportive, and willing to meet you halfway?
Yeah, I know which one I would choose. Right. And this leads us to another one of Gottlieb's really fascinating concepts, repetition compulsion.
Yes.
This idea that we tend to repeat relationship patterns that are rooted in, like, our childhood experiences.
It's so fascinating, isn't it?
It is.
And it can be so frustrating if you're not aware of it.
Yes.
Because we can, like, unconsciously find ourselves drawn to partners who remind us of people from our past, even if those relationships weren't, like, good or healthy for us.
So how can our listener figure out if they're caught in this cycle? What are some signs to look for?
Well, self-reflection is key here. So think about, like, your past relationships.
Okay.
Are there any recurring themes or patterns? Do you find yourself attracted to a certain type of person, even if those relationships, haven't been good for you? Maybe you consistently choose partners who are emotionally unavailable or who tend to be critical or controlling.
Right.
Yeah, and that can be tough to admit.
Yeah.
But it's really the first step toward breaking those patterns.
It is. Gottlieb also emphasizes that boundaries are for managing our own actions, not for controlling other people.
I love how she uses this analogy of an aquarium to describe boundaries.
Okay.
You don't want a relationship that has no boundaries, like a vast, wide-open ocean. But you also don't want one that feels super restrictive, like a tiny little fishbowl.
Right. It's finding that balance.
It's finding that balance.
A space where both people feel safe and respected,
Mm-hmm.
and where there's room to move and grow without feeling, suffocated or lost at sea.
Right. And then maintaining those boundaries consistently is so crucial.
Yeah.
If you let things slide sometimes, then, you're sending mixed messages, and those boundaries, they start to lose their effectiveness.
Right. Consistency is key.
Yeah.
And Gottlieb also gives some really great advice about how to approach those difficult conversations that we were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
She really emphasizes going into them with kindness, curiosity, and a genuine desire to understand the other person's perspective.
Yeah, it's not about winning an argument or proving that you're right. It's about coming to, like, a shared understanding, even if you don't agree on everything.
And I love her suggestion to hold hands during those difficult conversations, especially with a romantic partner.
It's such a simple gesture,
It is.
but it can be so powerful. It helps to calm the nervous system, create a sense of connection, and remind both partners that they're in this together.
Yeah, it's like a physical reminder that you're on the same team, even when things are getting a little bit heated.
Exactly. And I think that sense of safety and support can make it so much easier to have those vulnerable conversations. And those are so essential for building that intimacy and trust.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so much of what she talks about, it really boils down to cultivating a deeper understanding,
Yes.
both of ourselves and in the people that we're in relationships with.
Right. And she's a huge advocate for journaling as a tool for self-reflection and for personal growth. Journaling can really help you become more aware of your, thought patterns and your emotional triggers and, like, all those underlying beliefs that might be, shaping your relationships.
Yeah, it gives you a space to just process those emotions, but without judgment.
Yeah.
And to kind of untangle those naughty thoughts and to start seeing things from a new perspective.
Yeah.
Gottlieb also points out that it can help you become more aware of how you talk to yourself, like that inner critic that we all have that can sometimes sabotage our relationships.
Yeah, it's about cultivating that inner voice of compassion and understanding.
Right.
Journaling helps you get curious about your own, experiences and your reactions and your role and, like, the dynamics of your relationships.
And Gottlieb also offers some really insightful advice about breakups.
Mm-hmm.
She compares them to the experience of grief, like that sense of loss and sadness, even anger.
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge that you're losing, like, a shared past, but also, like, a vision of the future. You're not only grieving the person, but also, like, the hopes and dreams that you had for that relationship. And Gottlieb really encourages people to allow themselves to just feel that pain and to challenge any, negative self-talk that might be coming up for them.
Oh yeah, it's so easy to spiral into those what ifs and if only.
Right.
But dwelling on the past won't change anything.
Yeah.
It's really about learning from that experience and then using those lessons to move forward in a healthier way.
Incompatibility doesn't mean that either person is bad or wrong. It just means that you weren't the right fit for each other, like, at that particular time.
Right.
And sometimes that's okay.
It is. Gottlieb also talks about the emotional significance of money in relationships. It's not just about budgeting and splitting bills. It's often representing, like, much deeper issues. like self-esteem, power dynamics, even those unspoken messages that we absorbed about money when we were growing up.
Yeah, she encourages couples to talk about those underlying issues rather than just focusing on like the practical aspects of money management.
Great.
It's about understanding each other's values and fears and beliefs around money.
Yeah, those can be some of the toughest conversations to have, but they're also so important for building that trust and transparency in a relationship.
Absolutely. And Gottlieb suggests asking each other questions like, what did money mean in your family growing up?
Oh, that's a good one.
Or what are like your biggest anxieties around money? Those conversations can be like a window into each other's and, emotional landscapes.
Totally. And sometimes couples just need a little bit of help, like navigating those conversations. Gottlieb is a big believer in couples therapy.
Right.
It provides a safe space, a structured environment where you can work through those challenges with, like, the guidance of a trained professional.
It's like having a relationship coach in your corner.
Right.
Someone who can help you understand each other better, communicate more effectively, and develop like healthier patterns of interacting with each other.
And Gottlieb emphasizes that so much growth can actually happen within a relationship. Like we're constantly learning and evolving, both as individuals and as partners.
It's about recognizing that relationships aren't static. They ebb and flow. They go through seasons,
Right.
and they require us to adapt and grow along the way.
Yeah, sometimes that growth means like letting go of certain expectations.
Yeah.
Or stepping outside of your comfort zone. It's about being willing to show up, to take responsibility, to apologize, to communicate openly and honestly.
And moving away from this need to win or to be right all the time. It's about choosing the relationship over your ego, even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard. Gottlieb also reminds us that we're not alone in these struggles. So many people face these same challenges in their relationships.
It's easy to feel isolated when you're going through, a rough patch, but knowing that other people are grappling with these same issues can be really validating and reassuring.
Totally. And she encourages people to seek support, whether it's from friends or family or even a therapist. Just having someone to talk to vent to bounce ideas off of, it can make a huge difference.
On that note, on her podcast, Dear Therapists, she shares some really fascinating insights from her own practice. She talks about how couples, they often fall into these predictable patterns of behavior.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about this.
Yeah.
What does that look like in real life?
So one example she gives is the dynamic where one partner is more like emotionally expressive while the other one tends to be more avoidant.
Oh, yeah, that sounds familiar.
It's like this dance that couples do where one person's actions will like trigger this predictable response from the other person. So like the more expressive partner might pursue connection while the avoidant partner pulls away, and then that just perpetuates the cycle.
So it's not about blaming either partner.
Right.
It's about recognizing that pattern.
Exactly.
And figuring out how to change the steps of that dance.
She really stresses the importance of stepping back and trying to see things from your partner's perspective. So instead of focusing on what they're doing wrong, ask yourself, what might be going on for them that I'm not aware of? What might be driving their behavior?
Yeah, that shift from judgment to curiosity can be so powerful.
It is. It opens up the possibility of understanding and compassion, even when you're feeling like frustrated or hurt.
And it's about owning your part in the dynamic too.
Right.
Instead of pointing fingers, ask yourself, what am I doing that might be contributing to this pattern? How can I show up differently?
It takes two, right?
It does.
She emphasizes that relationships are a two-way street. Both partners have to be willing to put in the effort to create a healthy and fulfilling connection.
And I think one of her most powerful messages is this idea of letting go of that winner and loser mentality.
Yes.
Like it's not a competition.
That's not a game.
Right. It's a partnership.
Right.
And sometimes the most loving thing that we can do is just accept that a relationship is not working. Even if it's really painful,
Yeah.
it can be so tempting to hold on, to try to force it to work.
Right.
But sometimes letting go is actually the bravest and the most compassionate thing that we can do.
For yourself?
For ourselves and for the other person.
And for the other person.
Gottlieb reminds us that we all deserve to be in relationships where we feel loved and valued.
Right.
And if a relationship isn't meeting those needs, it might be time to walk away,
Yeah.
even if it's really difficult.
Yeah, and that's not always an easy decision to make.
Right.
And there's no shame in seeking support during that process. Whether it's from a therapist or a friend or a family member, having someone to talk to can really make all the difference.
Totally. And she offers some great advice for navigating like that emotional roller coaster of a breakup. Just be kind to yourself. Allow yourself to grieve that loss and try to avoid making like any big decisions
Right.
while you're still, processing those big emotions.
It's about giving yourself that time and space to heal and to recognize that healing takes time. There's no need to rush the process or pretend that you're not hurting. Allow yourself to feel those emotions fully without judgment.
Absolutely. And Gottlieb also emphasizes the importance of learning from our past relationships.
Yes.
Like what worked, what didn't work, what patterns did you notice? What are those non-negotiables in a relationship for you?
It's about using those insights to make like more conscious choices in the future. Understanding your needs, recognizing those patterns, and choosing partners who are more likely to be like a good fit.
It's about breaking those cycles of repetition compulsion that we were talking about.
Yeah.
And just making like more conscious choices that align with your values and your goals. And Gottlieb's work really offers so much practical wisdom, for navigating this messy world of human relationships. And she gives us all the tools, right? Like for communication, for setting those boundaries, for understanding ourselves and the people we're with, and just for creating more fulfilling connections.
And one of the biggest takeaways is that relationships are a journey, not a destination.
Right.
They're constantly evolving, and we're always like growing and learning, within them.
Yeah, that's a great point. It takes the pressure off of needing to have it all figured out right away.
Yeah.
It lets us approach these relationships with more curiosity and openness to change and a willingness to just like embrace those ups and downs because they're inevitable.
She encourages us to really embrace that messiness and the challenges and the imperfections that come with being in a relationship, because that's where the real growth happens.
Right.
Like it's in those moments of friction that we actually learn the most about ourselves and about the other person.
It's accepting that there will be disagreements.
Yeah.
And moments of frustration and times when you just like don't see eye to eye.
Right.
And that's normal. What really matters is how you handle those challenges.
It's about approaching those moments with compassion and understanding and a willingness to learn and grow, like both individually and as a couple.
And Gottlieb stresses that it's not about finding like the perfect person. It's about finding someone who is willing to grow and evolve with you.
It's about finding someone who challenges you and supports you and inspires you to be your like best self. And it's about, being willing to be that person for them too.
Right.
Like such a beautiful vision of what a relationship can be. A real partnership built on mutual respect and support and this shared commitment to growth. So what does all this mean for you, our listener?
Yeah. What does it mean?
Well, it means that you have the power to create healthier and more fulfilling relationships in your own life. And you can start by applying, these insights from Gottlieb's work, like shifting those negative patterns, setting those clearer boundaries, and communicating, more effectively.
Right.
You can start to cultivate those qualities like kindness and flexibility and emotional stability within yourself.
Absolutely. And you can start to approach relationships with a sense of curiosity and compassion and a willingness to learn and grow alongside your partner.
Relationships are a journey, not a destination. The real rewards come from embracing those challenges and celebrating the triumphs together.
Wow, that was an incredible deep dive into the world of relationships. What stood out to you most from all of this?
I think for me, it's just that emphasis on approaching relationships with like curiosity instead of judgment. It's such a simple shift, but it can be really profound and make all the difference.
Absolutely. And remember, you have the tools to create more fulfilling connections.
Yes, you do.
Like identifying your needs, setting those healthy boundaries, and just prioritizing open communication. Those are great places to start.
And one final thought to leave you with. Think about a relationship that's challenging you right now.
Okay.
What would happen if you approached it with that same spirit of curiosity and compassion? Like what new insights might you gain?
Ooh, that's a good one. Excellent point. Until next time, keep diving deep.